G'day friends, it's Andrew Goodall here again from Nature's Image Photography, and in this video I'm going to take a close look at shooting in high resolution mode on the Panasonic GH6. I've just come back from a pretty amazing photography tour in Western Australia where I took time to really test out high res mode, so now I want to show you what it's all about and share some of my results. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel, and if you really discover something of value in my videos, you can always thank me with a coffee. There's a link in the information below. So what exactly is high resolution mode? When you press the button, the camera very quickly shoots 8 separate photos using the electronic shutter, each with a tiny shift of the sensor created by the Advanced Image Stabilization System. Then those 8 images are merged into one huge file. In the case of the GH6, the 25 megapixel sensor can create a 100 megapixel image using high-res mode. The result is a photo with much greater and sharper detail, and if printing is your thing, then you can expect to print much larger and sharper photos than you would ever expect from a crop sensor camera. High-resolution mode continues to evolve on Panasonic Lumix cameras. Originally, you could only shoot non-moving subjects on a tripod because any moving subject would appear in 8 different places in the merged image. Then a firmware update on the G9 introduced Mode 2, which eliminates motion blur, so now you could shoot a scene where a moving subject was recorded only once. I've made reviews about high-res on the G9 and the S1, and I'll put links in the info below. But the GH6 takes high resolution a step further. Now with 7.5 stops of image stabilization, it's the first Lumix camera that offers a handheld option, so you don't even need a tripod anymore. I've been really keen to put this to the test, and on my latest tour I did just that. I'm going to show you my results, but first let's take a look at how to set up high resolution mode on your GH6. Now I didn't have the chance to do this on the tour, so I made this little demo segment somewhere a bit less exotic after I got home. So step 1 is about as easy as it gets. There's a dedicated high resolution position on the mode dial. So simply switch the dial to the 4th position. Now you have some options to decide on. So go to the first section of the menu, and right there on page 1 you'll find a heading called High Resolution Mode Setting. First menu item on the list is the option to shoot handheld, which naturally you would switch off if you're using a tripod. Just as a side note, when handheld is off as it is here, the image stabilizer is automatically disabled. When you switch handheld on, the full power of the image stabilizer is automatically engaged. So it's really essential, if you're not using a tripod, to be sure you switch handheld on. Next comes picture quality, and you can choose a quality option for high res that's independent of what you use for everyday shooting. So you can select from JPEG Fine plus RAW, or RAW only. If you choose Combined, which is what I use, then your picture quality for your high resolution files will be the same as you use for all your other photography. Since I shoot RAW all the time, then by choosing Combined I know that my high res photos will be RAW as well. If you choose JPEG, you'll find an extra option where you can choose to record the full 100 megapixel file or a smaller 50 megapixel option. I would expect that most people, if they choose to shoot in high res, would opt for the largest file they can get. Next you can choose whether you want to simultaneously shoot a normal shot along with your high res shot. This one's pretty straightforward. If you turn it on, then each time you take a shot the camera will also save a regular image along with your 100 megapixel high resolution photo. You can of course turn it off, but I always have it on, and that's why I can show you some of the side-by-side comparisons you'll see later in this video. Now we come to shutter delay, and this is pretty essential if you're not shooting handheld, because remember, turning handheld off disables the image stabilizer. You can choose anything from 1/8 of a second all the way through to 30 seconds, which you might use if you wanted time to position yourself in your own photo. I have no desire to stick myself into a perfectly good landscape, so I've been using a 2-second delay. With a fairly sturdy tripod, that's usually enough to eliminate any camera movement caused when I press the button. And finally, you can choose how the camera handles motion blur, and this is the same as what I mentioned about the G9 right at the start of this video. If you select Mode 1, then motion blur is captured as shot, with a moving subject appearing in 8 different places in the assembled high-res image. If you select Mode 2, the image is processed to eliminate motion blur. Note that Mode 2 isn't available for handheld shooting, so it can only be done with a tripod. I haven't done any serious high-res work involving motion, so just for demonstration purposes I took these two sample photos to show you the difference. The first shot is in Mode 1, and you can see me appear in 8 different places. The second shot was taken with Mode 2 enabled, and I appear only once. Now if working through all those menu items seems like a lot of work, don't worry, you won't need to do that every time. Once your settings are chosen, they're locked in unless you choose to change them. So most of the time all you need to do is turn the mode dial to the high res position and you're ready to start shooting. And speaking of shooting, here's what happens when you press the button. After your chosen delay time, you'll hear a bit of rapid fire clicking as the camera fires off the 8 photos. Then you need to wait for a few seconds of processing time before you can look at the photo. Now because I shoot a simultaneous regular photo along with each high-res shot, when I review my pictures I'll see what first looked like 2 identical photos. But it's easy to spot the high-res file because it will display a little symbol like the one on the mode dial. The regular photo doesn't. So as you begin reviewing your photos, it's easy to see which photos are the usual 25 megapixel file and which ones are the 100 megapixel high-res file. But of course the real test isn't what you see on the back of the camera, it's what you can do with the photos afterwards. So now I'm going to show you some comparisons and try to demonstrate how much more you can get out of a high resolution file. I only hope that the quality I can see on my screen translate to what you can see in a YouTube video. Let's start with a simple size comparison, and here I'm looking at 2 photos side by side in Adobe Bridge. They look identical, but a closer look at the details shows us the real story. The regular photo is 5,776 pixels wide and a 40 megabyte file. The high-res weighs in at 11,552 pixels wide and a massive 155 megabytes. Now let's try that a different way. Same 2 photos, totally unedited by the way, on screen in Photoshop. Once again they look identical. But when I go into image size, you can see that the regular file, without resizing, would print at 48.9 cm at 300 dpi. The high-res version, if not resized, comes in at 97.8 cm, so almost a metre, also at 300 dpi. Now 2 completely different photos, and once again in normal screen view they look identical. But if I drag the regular photo down and overlay it with the high resolution file, you can clearly see the difference in relative size. Now all that is interesting, and it proves the point that the high-res files are much bigger. But if you're not producing gigantic printed photos, is there really any point shooting high resolution files? Well, for my final comparison, and this is the one where I really hope you can see the difference, here is a portion of the regular photo displayed at 100%. By definition, this photo has been pushed as far as it can go. Any larger and it'll start to pixelate. And it shows. If you look closely, you begin to see the grainy look of a photo pushed to its limits. Now, the high resolution file. It only needs to be enlarged to 50% to appear exactly the same size. And the quality difference is noticeable, at least on my screen. It's just as sharp, but the finish is smooth and clear with no sign of grain or pixelation. This photo could clearly be enlarged further, but at equal size to the regular photo, it's a cleaner, sharper, more detailed and higher quality image. And that tells me that even if you're not producing huge prints, there are still benefits to the high resolution process on the GH6. It's nice to know you can display them as much larger images, but even viewed in smaller sizes, you're going to see an appreciable upgrade in detail and overall image quality. So there's my look at high resolution mode on the Panasonic Lumix GH6. While this camera is famous for its video qualities, it really is a powerhouse for still photographers too. If you've been curious to see how high-res works and what it can do, I hope this video has answered some of your questions. For myself, I'm sold. I thought the high-res mode on the G9 was impressive, but because it required a tripod and because I've been more focused on wildlife for the past couple of years, I never really got much use out of it. But now I'm getting back into travelling, I think this is a feature I'll be using a lot more, especially now that the handheld mode makes it so much more accessible. I've got another tour coming up, so it won't be long before I have some more high-res photos to show off too. For now, I'm Andrew Goodall. This is Nature's Image Photography. Thanks for watching.